protesting is just the first step for a lot of people, and we're already seeing these protests get a little bit ugly. I just sent you this like breaking story that's happening right now that, as the time of recording this. But essentially, a pickup truck driver in Iowa plowed through a bunch of pro-choice protesters who were opposing the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And this is we talked about on Power Report how there are
We were just talking
Republican
about this before the show about protesting and how terrified I am of protests for this reason, you know?
because as we've talked about on and off air on Power Report, like there are Republican politicians who have made it legal for you to do what this pickup truck driver is doing. I don't know exactly off the top of my head right now. This is breaking. I didn't prepare for it about in Iowa, but in states like Florida, it's legal to, if there are protesters in your way and you can like argue it in the right way, you can just run through protesters and with cars. Like it's insane. And like there were protests in LA and New York and across the country, of course, with Roe v. Wade. That decision happening and people rightly being frustrated, and that came with the usual police violence and different protesters, especially because of the nature of this protest. A lot of women being brutalized by our overly militarized police forces, who are very clearly on the side of taking away people's rights. At the same time, they defend to the teeth the houses of the Supreme Court justices. I I think
Yeah.
this is what I'm all like trying to think about is that like how you're kind of elaborating this already, but how can people go beyond just the protest? Like, what I think we need to do is first we need to take the fight to Democrats and say, listen, we're not doing any more of this bullshit, honestly. We're gonna, just hold our nose and vote and wait for the candidate who's the lesser of two evils. Like, there's no lesser of two evils if you're not going to do anything at all. If you're just going to be the status quo, that means you're letting the most evil of evil do all their dirty work. And you're trying to partner with evil or negotiate with evil because you don't realize that the opposing side, the Republican Party, is literally willing to put targets over the districts of Democrats saying you should go after them. I mean, Republicans at this point are openly talking about going after other Republicans with guns, all right? So don't think they aren't talking about that with Democrats. And yet Democrats are on the side of continually trying to negotiate, trying to play like footsies with these absolutely vicious ghouls that are elected Republican officials. So I think these protests shouldn't just be happening generally all around. They need to be targeted at Democrats like Kirsten Sinema, like Joe Manchin, those like wavering Republicans who keep making it so Congress can't make changes on these things fast enough. And then the Democrats who are elected, like, and I'm talking about through things like getting rid of the filibuster and allowing for these types of desperate times call for desperate measures scenarios in Congress where you can actually get things passed, because they've talked about this, but Democrats are like, oh, we don't want to break decorum because then Republicans will do it. Breaking news, Republicans are already breaking precedent to get whatever they want done. So it's time for Democrats to do the same. What should Democrats do while they're doing this? I mean, there was a Washington Post article from a couple years ago that I'll get the name of the person who wrote it really quickly and thank them for it. But they mentioned that one thing you could do, this is Ryan Dorfler, he just wrote for the New York Times, I believe. Oh, sorry, for Washington Post. And they said that one thing you could do is limit judicial authority in such a way where you require a supermajority to strike down areas of law that have been passed legislatively. So this idea that you can just have judges strike down laws they don't like on 5-3 majorities, or like however like slim majorities they get, make it say no, you need to have a supermajority, basically all but one or two judges agree to strike down this law as unconstitutional before you can get these activist judges going on. Another thing you could do, court packing. You're going to be fought through it every step of the way, but try it. There's no law that says there can be only have to be 9 seats on the Supreme Court. And Republicans expanded the courts on the federal level so that they can do this exact same thing. Those are just some of the things I think people can direct their attention towards doing that go beyond just activism, right? And I know I asked you the question, then ran on a rant and tangent, but like, what are some other things you think people can do? Because this whole cycle of going out to protest, getting brutalized by anti-protesters who work for the government and who are political operatives, and then going to Democrats who do nothing. We need to break this cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you that we need to be focusing more on the Democrats that we have in office and the ones who are trying to get elected into office, right? And I think a lot of people don't pay as much attention as they should to local elections, right? Those things matter way more to the average person than most people realize. And this is kind of a weird example that I'm about to use, but I promise it's just the concept and not the overarching extrapolation that you
Oh,
could
I'm all
use.
for
But
weird examples.
I mean, if you look at, Hitler, right? He was in charge of Germany at the worst time. He was the worst leader of Germany, right? But a lot of his supporters didn't realize that he was so terrible because all these local governors were the ones who were doing his bidding, right? All these local elected officials were the ones who were saying, you can't do this and you have to do this and whatever. They were the ones enforcing the law. And so these people are mad at their local officials and not even realizing that Hitler is the one who's behind all of it, right? You have to deal with what's going on in your town because that will make a huge difference, right? Especially when we talk about gerrymandering and redistricting, all that stuff matters, right? You have to vote hard in local elections or else it's kind of like a trickle up effect, which I know doesn't make any sense, at least as far as like physics is concerned, but it does kind of what happens on the ground level does affect what happens at the top and vice versa, but you have to have both components. And a good example of that is here in Texas, Jessica Cisneros, the progressive candidate, she just lost her runoff election for the primary for one of these very flippable districts it's not flippable, it's actually a blue district, but it's being held right now by a really dino candidate, Henry Cuellar, who is against abortion rights and he was endorsed by Nancy Pelosi, right? He just won. So all that stuff matters. We have to get in on the local level. And then on top of that, you have to once these people are in power, I think that something on the right that happens a lot, but it also happens on the left, is we get very sycophantic about our leaders. That needs to stop. These are just people. We put them there, right? They have a lot of money, but that's it. They have a lot of power, but they work for us, or they're supposed to, right? We are allowed to hold them accountable, and we need to. We're supposed to. If you have a boss at work doesn't do something you like, you may not be able to go tell that boss directly that you don't like what they're doing, but you have avenues, right? You have different places to express your anger and frustration. You can give feedback, all these different things. But the thing is, you have to apply pressure onto these elected officials, right? Otherwise, they'll just do whatever they can and there's no consequences for it. They feel nothing. They're further disconnected from their constituencies, and that's not good for anybody. And then there was another point, but I lost it. So come back to me.
My point was that that does work in physics. Trickle up is just evaporation, and like grassroots kind of going in that kind of mode of things and motivating people to do that. I mean, that's what I've been screaming from the rooftops for the past several years on like Dan from the Internet as a venture and just in general. Like politics is best affected by regular people like you and I who are just very politically engaged, have a lot of other things going on, but we pay enough attention politically to be in like the top 20% of people in the country who like have political knowledge, how we can use that as opposed to getting angry at national politics, which is pretty much done for. I shouldn't like lie and sugarcoat it any otherwise. We should still make efforts for national politics, but I think we should make much more of an effort for state politics and try to get information about that across and out there. And I think that's going to be something I do as like a personal mission on Power Report. But it's really does mean at the local level, at your city council, at the county level, at the state level, this is where the left has to start fighting for power back again because we we to say we are running out is an understatement. We have run out. It is now damage control mode. Maybe you've thought of that other thing, but I guess kind of my last question to you is do you agree with the idea of Democrats like going to drastic measures, even if they're like extra constitutional, so to speak, like court packing, which I think is within the Constitution and within your rights to do. But basically, just should the Democrats be playing as dirty as the Republicans, or is there some legitimacy to them saying, well, then the Republicans will all of a sudden start playing dirty?
Well, it's like your earlier analogy, right? The Republicans are playing chess, and why can't the Democrats also play chess? That's what this is about, isn't it? That's why they got into politics, was for the game of it, right? how many of those people in Congress right now actually got into Congress because they really, really wanted to make a difference in the world and to their towns and to the people that they represent, right? These people are political operatives, right? So operate and operate better. You know, you have all these different laws and rules and things that you can play with. Find a way to make things happen. You can do it. You can find a way to make it happen, right? And the way that that happens, however it happens, stay within the law. Don't do anything illegal. But if you got to play dirty, if you have to do something that might feel a little dirty, then do it because they are already doing it on the other side. They've been doing it for so long. And Democrats, we like to take like the high horse and say, oh, well, I would never do that because that's immoral. But at the same time, we're getting our asses beat. And I mean, it's so frustrating for so many people just to see them kind of roll over and just be sad every time they lose something, right? And it's not enough for them to be sad because they didn't do their jobs good enough. We're sad and we're now angry. And that is just going to keep compounding upon itself the more that things don't happen. You know, people can only be beaten down so many times before something needs to change. You need a different strategy. You have to figure something out. You have the most brilliant minds in the world who are willing and able to help you. So utilize all the resources because now is a time to throw the entire book at everything. You know, throw all your resources at what you're fighting for. Because if you're not going to do it, then who is? You're the one who wanted the privilege to fight for these things for us. So do it.
That's Can't say it better myself, so won't try. That's the last word.